What are the strangest things your body can do? You might think that you know everything about your own physiology, but did you know that you could also smell your own ketones, or that your brain has its own mini ecosystem? If not, here are some of the most fascinating facts from the science of human physiology that you probably never learned anywhere else. You have a second brain in your gut. Your brain is the command center of your body, responsible for everything from how you move to how you think. But it turns out, you have another major control center elsewhere. Scientists now believe that the enteric nervous system, or ENS, which resides in the walls of your digestive tract, has nearly as many neurons as your entire nervous system. The ends can take messages from your brain and spinal cord and translate them into actions like telling your gut when it's time to digest food or send signals to your gut bacteria to tell them what to do. It even has some autonomy from your central nervous system, meaning that it can respond to some stimuli without your brain's help. And scientists have found that the ENS affects your mood. It can produce neurotransmitters like serotonin, which affects appetite, and can impact your emotions by communicating with the parts of your brain that process feelings. So, while there's only one of you, you technically have two brains. Your brain is home to an entire ecosystem. Although no one can see an ecosystem inside their head, researchers recently discovered that your brain houses its own community of microorganisms. This includes bacteria, fungi, and viruses, which collectively make up the human microbiome. At one time, scientists thought that you acquired your microbiome when you were born, as your mother cradled you after you were born. And this is still considered a significant way to acquire these microbes. However, other research suggests that you actually begin acquiring microbes long before you're born. Microbes colonize the fetus around 23 weeks into gestation, likely coming from vaginal fluids and breast milk. These microbes are thought to help break down nutrients and may protect against disease. Now scientists want to learn more about the microbiome of the brain. They don't know how exactly it influences your health, but they're looking at whether it plays a role in diseases like depression, Parkinson's disease, and Alzheimer's disease. So it seems that you're not just made of you can smell your own It's a bit like smelling freshly cut grass or freshly brewed coffee. For some people, there's a familiar scent that means only one thing. You're in ketosis is a metabolic state where your body burns fat for energy instead of carbohydrates. When you eat very few carbs, your liver starts converting fat into molecules called ketones, which are then released into your bloodstream and used by the rest of your body for fuel. This happens during normal low-carb diets, but it also occurs when you haven't eaten in a while or if you have diabetes. The reason why some people smell ketones, though, isn't completely clear. One idea is that ketones change the odor of your sweat, which then gets detected by your nose. Another possibility is that altered blood flow delivers ketones to your nasal passages directly. Whatever the mechanism behind it, some people can smell ketones before they even get to their coffee. You can smile and breathe at the same time. Ask anyone to breathe deeply, and they will likely tell you to first stop smiling. That's because breathing deeply requires cooperation between your diaphragm, lungs, muscles between your ribs, and your abdominal muscles. If your smile is engaged, those muscles can't do their job. But, for some people, it's not so simple. A rare condition called aerophagia makes it impossible for someone to breathe and smile at the same time. Those with aerophagia swallow air along with their food or drinks, leading to painful gas buildup in their stomachs. This makes belching or passing gas extremely uncomfortable, but these behaviors are actually crucial for survival. After all, gas builds up in your stomach and intestines as a byproduct of digestion. Sometimes relief comes at an inopportune time, like when you're trying to put on a beautiful smile. This is because the muscles used for belching and passing gas are located near your mouth. So if those muscles tense up, you can't smile. While there's no cure for aerophagia, doctors can suggest ways to reduce air swallowing. Your brain is not always in focus. Have you ever been talking with a friend when suddenly you realized you were really listening to them? Perhaps you were thinking about something else, or maybe you were preoccupied with the events of the day. You probably don't realize it, but this is happening to you all the time. In fact, at any given moment, your brain focuses on only a small amount of sensory input. The rest of the stimuli bombarding your body simply get filtered out. When you were listening to your friend, you weren't hearing everything being said, only what your brain decided was important at the time. Even your vision works this way. You focus on one thing, and the details of everything else fade into the background. And if you've ever seen something surprising, you probably noticed this selective attention firsthand. When something catches your eye, your brain pulls your attention away from whatever you were focusing on previously. Attention is a psychological process. but it relies heavily on your brain's physiology to work properly. You have two different types of tears. Crying is a natural response to emotional stress, but there's more to tears than meets the eye. Not all tears are created equal. Basal tears lubricate your eyes, while reflex tears are produced in response to something irritating like an onion or chlorine. Emotional tears, on the other hand, are a reflex triggered by your limbic system, the part of your brain responsible for processing emotions. Emotional tears contain more water and fewer proteins than basal tears. They also have higher levels of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. But why cry? Researchers aren't sure, but there are a few ideas. Some think that crying helps flush out stress hormones. Others suggest that it's a form of nonverbal communication, or that it helps you relax and calm down. You have a biological clock that controls sleep. Imagine going to bed at 8 p.m. every night and waking up at 7 a.m. the next day. Your body would soon fall out of sync with the actual 24-hour day. Without our awareness, our bodies keep track of time through a biological clock known as the circadian rhythm. It's controlled by a region in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, which receives information about light from your eyes and uses it to regulate sleep cycles, hormone release, and other bodily processes. But it doesn't work alone. The SCN contains around 20,000 neurons, but they interact with millions of other neurons in your brain to synchronize the rest of your body's clocks. All told, your body runs on a network of roughly 100 oscillators, each keeping time and adjusting itself based on input from the others. These clocks ensure that everything from enzyme production to hormone release happens at the right time. You can feel pain without having a pain receptor. Pain is a sensation we'd rather do without, but it's useful for keeping us away from danger. Receptors in your skin and other tissues send pain signals to your brain when you come into contact with something harmful, but in rare cases, you can feel pain even when those receptors aren't activated. People with congenital insensitivity to pain can experience pain in response to emotional distress rather than physical stimuli. This unusual phenomenon shows us that pain perception isn't as straightforward as we once thought. We now know that the brain is responsible for creating our experience of pain. It does this by taking input from the body and then deciding what should be perceived as painful. Your bladder is muscular. You might know your bladder as the organ responsible for holding pee, but did you know that it has its own unique set of muscles? The bladder wall is made up of smooth muscle cells that allow the bladder to expand as it fills with urine. But when it's time to pee, the bladder muscles contract to push urine out of the body. These muscles are under the control of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of the nervous system that regulates involuntary processes like urination and digestion. But you also have some control over your bladder. When you feel the urge to go to the bathroom, you can hold off until you get to the toilet. This requires input from your brain to the muscles around your urethra, which acts like a sphincter to keep urine from leaking out. While you hold it, the muscles in your bladder relax so it can continue to stretch. But eventually, the stretch signals get too much for your brain to ignore, and you find yourself rushing to the restroom. You blink between 10,000 and 20,000 times a day. Blinking is a reflex that we do consciously and unconsciously throughout the day. It helps lubricate and clean the surface of the eye, while also protecting it from debris. Each blink takes around 100 milliseconds, although some people blink faster than others. And you're probably blinking more often than you realize. Experts estimate that the average person blinks somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 times a day. And while you usually notice when someone is staring at you intently, blinking doesn't always indicate that someone is paying close attention. People blink more often when they're tired, bored, or if the air is dry. People also tend to blink less when they're concentrating on something, like reading a book or solving a puzzle. Now check out what's the weirdest fact about your heart or watch. Why do we get